I hope all of you can see my screen. So, as I have mentioned that today I am going to explain you a little about how to greet people, how to shake hands with people, how to remember the names of the people, and how to exchange visiting cards. Okay, so let's start with what is greeting? What is greeting? So, when you meet someone, okay, when you meet someone, you wish them good morning, good afternoon, isn't it? You wish them good evening. So, this act of communication is known as greeting. All right. When you meet someone and when you wish him good morning or good afternoon or good evening, this particular act of communication is known as greeting. All right. It's a polite word or it's a sign to welcome someone. Okay, whenever you see someone, what do? You use a polite word or any kind of gesture to wish that person, to welcome that person. And that's what greeting is. It's the action of giving a sign of welcome. So it is considered to be a good way of starting any kind of conversation or any kind of talk. All right. So whenever you meet someone, you're not supposed to directly discuss about any topic. At first, you should greet the person. You should greet the other person. At first, you should welcome the other person, or you should use an expression of goodwill in order to start the conversation. And that's what greeting is. All right, is it clear what is greeting? I know all of you know what is greeting, but will you be able to explain it? What is greeting? Will you be able to do so? Will you be able to write it? Will you be able to write the meaning of greeting? Yes or no?
Now, yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine then. Let's move ahead. So, in the industry where you are going to work in the future, greeting plays a very important role. You will have to greet your guests. Whenever you see a new guest or an existing guest, you are supposed to greet them. Why? Because this is an act of goodwill. So, whenever you see a new guest at your workplace or at the hotel where you are working, what do you have to do? You have to, first of all, greet the other person, isn't it? You have to, first of all, wish them a good morning, or you have to wish them a good afternoon, isn't it? You have to welcome them. You have to say welcome ma'am or welcome sir, isn't it, in a polite way. So that is why greeting is considered as a polite behavior, and it is a very good way of starting any kind of conversation. It is a very good way to start any communication process. So we should always greet people whenever we meet them. So greetings are used prior to a conversation, isn't it? Greetings are used just before any kind of conversation in order to welcome the other person. Okay, so that's what greeting is. Now, after you greet, if you do not know the person, if the person you have greeted is a stranger, then you would definitely give your introduction, isn't it? You would give your introduction, and then you would also like to ask uh, ask the name of the other person, or you would like to know a little more about the other person, isn't it? After greetings, the process of introduction begins if you are meeting that person for the very first time. So you have to introduce yourself, and after that, you would also want the other person to introduce himself or herself, isn't it? So, we have already discussed about how to introduce yourself. What are the points you must include when you give your introduction? So, you should begin with your name, then you should tell about your occupation, isn't it? So, these are the things you are supposed to mention when you are introducing yourself. And you expect the same from the other person too. You expect him or her to introduce himself or herself. Now, this is about self introduction, and we have already done self introduction. We have already completed the topic self introduction, and you already know what are the points you are supposed to include when you need to introduce yourself to someone. Now, when you introduce yourself, your introduction would vary a little depending upon the situation. Okay, if you are in an interview, then you are supposed to add details such as your name, the name of your hometown, your qualification, share the details about your experiences or any kind of internship or projects that you have completed. Then you need to tell a little about your hobbies and your skills, isn't it? So, this is how you introduce yourself in an interview. Now, when you introduce yourself to a guest or to a client, you might not add all these information, and instead of sharing all these information, you might share only your name. You might tell only your name, then your designation, the name of the organization where you are currently working, and your responsibilities maybe. So, self introduction, the way you introduce yourself, the points that you include in self introduction, it varies. The points vary from one situation to another. So in an interview, you're supposed to add or you're supposed to add a lot of details in an interview, whereas when you're introducing yourself to a guest or you're introducing someone in a formal gathering, then you might not add all the information. So after greeting, you have to introduce yourself. If you already know the person, then you do not have to again and again introduce yourself. All right, if you already know the person, if you have met the person earlier, then introduction is not necessary. After greeting, you can directly start the conversation, or you can provide whatever help is needed. But if you do not know the person, and if you are seeing or meeting the person for the first time, then you are supposed to also introduce yourself, and the other person will also do the same. All of you, please mute yourself. Do not unmute. Okay. Now, sometimes when you are the host, okay, sometimes when you are the host, please mute yourselves. Prasenjit, okay. Now sometimes when you are the host, okay, when you are the host and you have invited some people, you have invited some people, for example, for a dinner. All right. Now, when Mr. A and Mr. B, they come to your place for the dinner. Suppose Mr. A and Mr. B do not know each other, okay? I'm again repeating it. Suppose you are hosting a dinner. You're hosting a dinner and you are the host. You have invited a few people at your place. Now, Mr. A has come, Mr. B has also come, and they are your guest. You know Mr. A, Mr. A knows you, you know Mr. B, Mr. B knows you. But Mr. A and Mr. B doesn't know each other and they are meeting for the first time. So being a host, it's your responsibility to introduce them to one another. How are you supposed to do that? How are you supposed to introduce two different people to one another? Okay, so when two people do not know one another and you are a common link between them, it's your responsibility to introduce them to one another. Now, how are you supposed to do it? How you should introduce them to one another, or how you should introduce them? What you need to say while introducing them to one another, or whom are you supposed to introduce at first? Okay, I am going to explain who to introduce first and how you need to introduce when you introduce someone to other. When you are the common link between two strangers, it's your responsibility to introduce them to one another, isn't it? So how are you supposed to introduce them to one another? So these are the 4 steps you should follow when you introduce two individuals to one another. All right, these are the 4 steps you must follow when you introduce two individuals to one another. You have to include the name of the person. You have to include the name of the person. You have to also use the phrase, I would like to introduce you to, or please meet. All right. So you can use any one of the two, or you can also use the term this is, if it is an informal occasion, so you can also use this is. But for a formal gathering or for a formal occasion, it's better to use the phrases please meet or I would like to introduce you to. All right. So you're supposed to tell the name of the person. You're supposed to use these phrases, and along with that, you are also supposed to introduce them in a order. Okay. Suppose you are introducing a higher ranking person to a lower ranking person, then you are supposed to take the name of the higher ranking person at the beginning, at first, and after that you are supposed to tell about the lower ranking person. Okay. Similarly, if you are introducing an older person to a younger person, so you are supposed to, first of all, tell the name of the older person, introduce the older person, and after that, you are supposed to introduce the younger person. So, there are certain rules and regulations which I will be teaching you now. And after that, the fourth one is to add some details, to offer some details about one another. Okay, you're supposed to provide certain details regarding certain details about both the person. Okay, like their occasion or designation, or you can like keep it short and simple. Do not elaborate it, do not make it too long. So these are the 4 things you must remember when you introduce someone. Name is very important. Then phrases such as I would like to introduce you to, please meet are very important. Then the hierarchy or the age group also should be kept in mind. Then the fourth one is to add certain details, but do not forget to be specific and keep it short and simple. Do not elaborate it. Do not make it too long. Next, as I have said that, I would tell you about how to make introductions, how to introduce people to one another. According to the age groups, how are you supposed to introduce them, introduce people, and how are you supposed to, whose name are you supposed to take at first, whom are you supposed to introduce at first, and whom you should introduce after, at last. So I am going to provide you these details. So when you are introducing a younger person to an older person, okay? So when you are introducing a younger person to an older person, what are you supposed to do? You are supposed to, first of all, take the name of the older person. For example, you are introducing your neighbors to your grandma. Okay? At first, you should use the term grandma. Okay? And then the phrase please meet. Then the name of the person or people, the younger ones, and after that Why are you introducing them to your grandma? What is your relation? What is your relation with them? Okay, so you are supposed to also mention that. So please see here. Grandma, please meet Alicia and Carlos, my neighbors. Now, whenever you are introducing a younger person to an older person, you are supposed to introduce in this manner. You're supposed to follow this order. Suppose you are introducing your colleague. Okay, you are introducing your colleague with your father. How are you supposed to do it? Again, you are supposed to follow the same process. Papa, please meet Mr. Z, my colleague. Okay, so in this order, you are supposed to introduce a younger person to an older person. The next one is introducing a junior professional to a senior professional. Now again, you have to follow the hierarchy here. First of all, you are supposed to take the name of the senior and then you are supposed to take the name of the junior. So here see, Miss Director, I would like to introduce Mr. Nakamura, the Chief Product Architect for our software division. So you are here maintaining the hierarchy. You are first telling the name or the designation of the person of the senior professional, and then you're using the phrase, and then after that you are taking the name and the you are taking the name of the junior professional, and also you have added what is his designation. Okay, you have also added his designation. So this is how you're supposed to introduce a junior to a senior professional if you are introducing them. Okay, when you introduce an employee to a customer, okay, when you introduce an employee to a customer or when you introduce a client to a customer, do not ever forget to take the name of the client at first. Okay, you are supposed to take the name of the client at first, and after that you should take the name of the employee or your colleague. Okay, at first you're always supposed to take the name of the client or the name of your customer. Okay, after that again you are supposed to add the phrase I would like to introduce or please meet. Then you are supposed to add the name of the employee or your colleague, okay, or your business partner. Also tell about his designation, or also tell about the name of the department. All right, so as you can see here, Mr. Sung, I would like to introduce our plastic engineering team. So now here a team has been introduced. Not only one person, a team has been introduced. Mr. Sung, I would like to introduce our plastic engineering team. This is Mark Smith, Jessica Ramos, and Liang Zhu. All three participated in last week's teleconference regarding product definition. Now here, because the person has introduced to a team, the person has introduced his customer to a team, so he has taken each and every name who is a part of the team, and also given a little details, also added a little detail about them. Okay, now you are also supposed to do the same. Okay, but if you are not introducing to a team, and if you're just introducing your client to maybe a single person, then it's the same way you're supposed to introduce. Okay, Mr. Sung, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Smith, who is from the plastic engineering team. This is how you are supposed to introduce an employee to a customer. Take the name of the customer or the client at first, and then after that use the phrase introduce, I would like to introduce you to, or please meet, and after that take the name of the other person, your colleague or or the employee, and then also mention his designation or the name of his department. So this is how you are supposed to introduce an employee to a client. So these are the things you are supposed to remember, because in future you will need these things when you will have to introduce to strangers, when you will have to introduce two different people. And this is how you are supposed to follow the hierarchy. At office, you are supposed to always take the name of the senior at first, and then take the name of the junior. And when you are introducing an older person to a younger person, always take the name of the older person, and then take the name of the younger person, and also mention why are you introducing them to the older person. Like, you do not have to mention why are you introducing them, but there must be some reason. He or she might be your friend, he or she might be your colleague, he or she might be your classmate, or someone whom you know, isn't it? Also describe that. Also, you are supposed to add that when you are introducing someone to someone. Okay, so there are certain ways of introducing people, and you must know whom to introduce at first, whose name you are supposed to take at first. Now when you are supposed to introduce a host to a guest, what are you supposed to do? Okay, so when you are attending, suppose, a party or some kind of occasion, all right, you know the host, and you also find a common friend there. Okay, how are you supposed to do it? Whose name are you supposed to take at first? First of all, take the name of the guest, and then you are supposed to take the name of the host. Okay, first of all, you are supposed to take the name of the guest, and then you are supposed to take the name of the host. The next point is, how are you supposed to introduce a local guest to a guest from out of town? Okay, how are you supposed to introduce a local guest, a guest from your own place, to a guest who is from a different place? How are you supposed to do it? You are supposed to take the name of the guest who has come from a different place at first, and then you are supposed to take the name of the local guest, or the guest from that particular place. So this is how you're supposed to introduce a local guest to a guest from out of station or some other part of the country or the world. The next one is introducing a peer from your company to a peer from another company. How are you supposed to do it? At first, you are supposed to take the name of the peer from the other organization. Okay, at first you are supposed to take the name of the peer from the other organization and then take the name of the peer from your organization. All right. So these are certain ways to make introductions, and this is how you're supposed to introduce one person to another. I hope it is clear. So do you have any kind of doubts? Is there any kind of doubt? Have you not understood something? Do you want to ask me something? Is it clear,
No, ma'am.
students?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I shall also share the notes, all right, so that you can go through it. And that's all for today, students.